All right, well, welcome to the Ring of Fire. I am Alex Barr.
I'm Emmy, the birth wizard.
Yay, we're here last episode of 2021.
Yeah.
You will get an extra episode next week. Our extra bonus episode, our second part of our meme reactions.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't seen the first one, head over to our YouTube channel. That's where all of these episodes go. So that way, if you're like, I don't want to watch the old episodes, I'm going to miss you during the holidays, that's where you go. Or if you're like, I just got here. What do you mean it's the last episode of the year? Head there. Go watch us. Or you could go on Anchor or Spotify.
All the places.
Or all the places where they're
all over.
And you guys can help us out by sharing all about us, like, during this break period. We're going to be back in January. We're just trying to be kind to ourselves during holiday times. It's coming up fast, so that way, you know, we don't have to keep rescheduling on you because Hanukkah and Christmas and Thanksgiving and like birthdays and all of that's going to go on. So,
and I got a seasonal job, so I'm not even available.
Right. So, yeah. Well, welcome. I think it's going to be fun today. I'm really excited about this episode.
I'm excited too. Okay, I mean, what are we talking about? Oh, we didn't do an intro?
Oh.
Should we do it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
What's the jam? Da 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 dum da 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 dum 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 da 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 dum dum dum. Yeah.
Love it. I'm obsessed. We can't even film. We can't even pre-record an intro because I need
my
little dance song every time.
My jingle that I make up on the spot where I'm like, yeah. For a couple weeks I was ripping it off, I'm pretty sure, from someone's like bass line of a 70s song. I can't even
it was like that one that's on Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Bum, 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 bum.
We have to get big enough to where we can use that now. Or maybe that's what it is we pre-record me just like doing it forever.
Yeah, and then we can always have it.
Right. So welcome to Ring of Fire. We're your two favorite doulas. Get you through tough conversations and remind you to breathe and get through it. Today is all about licensing and insurance and
all the fun things,
birth work and doulas and our opinions and like how we can operate around it. And this is all off of the heels of literally 2 days ago Tricare being like, hey, we cover doulas now.
And Tricare, for anybody who doesn't know, is like the military's health version of healthcare.
Yeah, it is.
The military universal healthcare, essentially.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And just like every other healthcare, there's like 17 branches of that healthcare inside of that one healthcare because you just gotta make up new and exciting ways. So, it's a pilot program. I guess we should start out with what the program is.
Yeah, let's do that. So let's talk about what they just rolled this out. It's a pilot program till, do you know when? I know it's for at least a few years.
They're saying 5 years.
So 5 years. And they will cover it, and it looks like you have all of this stuff there. What are the certifications, regulations, or whatever you will need to be covered as a doula by Tricare?
Okay, so under the Tricare program, you need to be certified by one of 5 organizations, which is BirthWorks International, DONA, CAPA, International Childbirth Education Association, which is ICEA, and then 2 Labor, which I hadn't heard of that one. It turns out they were under a different name that was like ALCEA. Anyway, so that's a newer name. So these all came about at the same time.
Hi, Deja!
They all have similar certification needs, though. Like, if you're certified with one, be expecting that all of these kind of are similar. The other part of it is that, like most insurance companies, they'll cover up to a certain amount, not all of it. And, so let's go with that. So, it is up to the recipient of your care to file it with Tricare. So we don't actually need to file anything.
Okay.
And I want to make that clear because a lot of people are like, Tricare's going to control me. Tricare wants nothing to do with you and your business, sis. They don't care. can you maybe like get more of a relationship there and talk to their reps? Obviously, yeah, but
or know how it works the
right.
same way you would if you were covered
Right.
by different insurance. Yeah.
But yeah, they don't need to talk to you. It's up to your like client or the person who's receiving that reimbursement
to pay you directly and then ask for the reimbursement.
Correct.
Okay.
And then essentially they send over that receipt.
Gotcha.
Similar to what we do with what's the shoot, it completely left my mind. When people use their like little
the health savings
yeah,
accounts. Yeah.
Similar to that. Sometimes like they'll ask for a receipt or something so they can verify and say this is how much it was to be reimbursed.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've been paid with that before.
Right. So reimbursements up to for postpartum, it's up to $46 per visit.
Okay.
And that's up to 6 visits.
Okay.
And then for birth, it's $690.
Okay.
And that's for your actually birth support.
Gotcha.
This also does cover, just as like a side note, IBCLCS. HSA. Thank you.
Yeah.
It also covers IBCLCs, which also have to be certified through a certain organization and all that, which IBCLCs do anyway to be able to have that name.
Yeah, and I had an ABCLC send us a message that I'll talk about later.
Cool. So what's kind of neat about this, which a lot of people I didn't see talking about, so I kind of got nerdy about it, guys. I wanted to read everything. One, this pilot program was born out of early pandemic times when Tricare was getting a lot of requests off of their clients, let's call it that, like users, I guess, for mental health support after birth. And they found that the individuals who had doulas with them or some sort of labor support did not file as often for mental health support.
Interesting. Yeah.
So this pilot program, and I think it should be like really noted as that, is it's essentially beta. Like they're testing out a thing to see like
if they see improvements,
correct,
if it will help. Yeah.
Correct. That's also why you see things like it's not available overseas or to certain individuals, because they're trying to keep it small so that way they can test it out easier. Yeah. Other part of it is that the IBCLCs are covered up to 6 visits. So that's nifty. The other part of it is they're expected for it to cost like $51.16 million, an additional $5 million every year after that analysis. So they're looking to spend a good amount of money on it. Like,
I mean, not if you're the military.
No, but if you're just stateside, and just people having babies, like
it would expand if they were provided it to everybody or more on a larger basis.
Yeah, so not. I mean, I'm not sneering at that number that they're like expecting that cost. Like that's not awful.
Yeah.
And that the thing that I found most interesting is this part where they were stating that how much doulas and lactation consultants and counselors provide services during pregnancy, and they're critical, and like really just talking about like they're trying their darndest.
They're valuing
the value
work that doulas are doing. Yeah.
Right. So these are the things I found out. Again, like it'll be fun to dive more into this, but. Yeah.
So the main thing that I've seen shared, because I've seen this shared quite a bit in like the past few days, is that a lot of people's concerns for the amount of things requested, like, or that are required. So like the 24 hours of labor training, the certain number of certifying births, the national provider number, the NPI, I wasn't sure what that was.
The NPI doesn't really apply to us.
Okay.
That applies to the IBCLCs.
Gotcha.
So that's part of, and I think that's also the issue. Is like we're 2 days after hearing this announcement, and the military is really great about rolling out communication flawlessly.
They know what they're doing.
But I think I'm being more patient with it for that reason of like, I'm seeing it as beta. Like we're just trying it out. So
I guess then I guess the big question would be about how do you feel about licensing of doulas in general, which is kind of what we asked on Instagram.
Yes.
Do you want to answer, or do you want me to read what
I think we should read the responses, because you and I have different opinions, and we already know that.
Yeah.
So
we know that.
I have a feeling, just knowing my opinion, I'm going to be in the minority.
Okay, and I think that's fair, right?
Go ahead.
So I did have an IBCLC reach out, which is great, and was just talking about insurance being a double-edged sword. The pay that you will have to agree to is important. The choices you have to make about the care you provide and at what prices you provide them at. And then you have to decide if you will deal with taking a cut in pay, if you'll take a cut in services provided, or if you can compete with the other doulas who are caught trying to make the same choices. So that's very hard.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great point to put. Like, you're adding more hoops to jump through. You're adding things like that, you know? We also had someone say that they love this, that they will do anything that makes doulas more accessible to people. And then I had someone say that can we be licensed and follow those certain rules and regulations for people who are using us through insurance, and then not use those rules for people who are not, which I think is a really good, then you're able to help people with insurance and without.
Yeah.
And then we had someone say could be helpful if done right, but it could turn into a slippery slope of control, which Emmy already says she doesn't like.
Right, because slippery slope is an actual fallacy, logical fallacy.
Yeah.
Like, if you go through speech and debate, slippery slope, literally if you pull that out on a stage, they're going to be like, no, that's gone.
So the thing that I get with the slippery slope idea and the concept of it is that, which we can maybe go into it a little bit more, but I find that it seems like licensing doulas or inviting them into that further would be going down a path of like the way midwives were licensed and regulated and almost eradicated, and some of the things that we have seen in the past that seem very similar and seem very like being a part of the system instead of actively trying to better it or work against it, kind of thing.
Okay.
That is where I see, because I do understand the slippery slope thing, like being a fallacy, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's the thought behind it, is that it really could be, okay, now we're licensed, and now we're regulated, and now our hands are tied a lot. And that's what this other message that someone sent, it says, we often get frustrated with nurses during birth. They act and do things that they do due to regulations via the workplace. They're required to follow rules and do things that may not be in line with what they actually want to do, which without a doubt would happen to doulas. It would become less about the doula and their practice and about what they're allowed to do or say or think. It would also cost doulas money to keep up with whatever regulations and certifications are required. And I do understand that, but we already do pay for that stuff.
Right.
We pay for that stuff, but the top part, I understand what she was saying.
So I think I'm just going to reveal my cards. I think this is fucking awesome. I think there's really like so much potential to this. I'm really stoked. Yeah. And the other side is, am I going to ever accept? Because I think this is the missing piece. We don't have to accept Tricare.
Yeah.
Right? I don't work for Tricare. The person receives a receipt from me, and they go to Tricare and deal with them. So that's why I don't find this
only
to be...
if you are following these certain regulations.
For sure. But I'm not choosing to follow those. So, like, this is also kind of the falsehood of this, of, like, everyone's freaking out. Like, I can feel it in the community of, like, but bro, then it's not for you.
And I don't think it's about Tricare necessarily, but maybe the becoming licensed, the becoming insured as well. And that's what this message says. What do you think about it only being certain organizations? Because there's so many of options.
Then go get certified by the other organization, and you don't serve Tricare people. Just like I don't usually serve home birth people, because that's not a space I'm comfortable in, right?
Yeah.
Because Tricare comes out and it's like, let me hand people $690 if they utilize your service does not mean I got to do shit for Tricare.
Yeah.
And I think that's that part that I get like frustrated with this like slippery slope or like we're getting regulated idea. No one's making you get regulated. No one's making you get licensed. No one's making us like go to certain organizations or whatever. And if we're going to call it out, Dona, Kappa, and Birthworks or Arts was going to be the first people to hop onto a train like this.
Yeah.
So if you're on like
certified, if you're on board with that, then maybe
you probably got certified by them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't find this scary. What I find it to be is like a really great way for a bunch of Tricare people to hear the word doula.
Yeah.
And maybe get the possibility of researching that. Just like IBCLCS. Suddenly, there's access. And that's what I'm excited about. Is
you're excited for more people being able to know what a doula is, to have the access to it, for it to be available to them.
Right. And I think the other part is like, because of what I was talking about earlier, Tricare sees us as mental health support. And maybe that's the other part of it is like, I'm fucking stoked that we're seen as that instead of birth support, and people can like mock at me. Yeah. But that's really what we are.
I agree. I agree with that. Yeah. I was literally just talking to someone the other day. I'm so tired of doulas being compared to nurses and doulas being compared to midwives.
Right.
Because that's not what we're there for.
No.
That is literally not what we're there for at all.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating because when you continually make those comparisons, that we're here to change some type of outcome, we're here to change some type of, grander system that is beyond all of us, right?
Right.
I get frustrated by that.
Right.
It really upsets me because we are there, in my opinion, first and foremost, for that emotional support.
Yes.
Right? We are not there to replace a nurse. We are there to replace the community support that you would have had 100 years ago.
So,
right?
Here's the part.
But that's my problem with the licensing.
Okay.
So for the same reason that you like it is the same reason that I don't.
But bro, do you not see how military families are removed from their communities and their places of support, and suddenly the military is like, oh shit, we have to make sure that they get that community and support, and even if I gotta pay for it extra to make sure that they have it, like I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's that part too, is like the military is stepping up and being like, they're out of their, because my parents even talked about it recently with me of they were living in North Carolina and all of their support system was in California.
Yeah, I've never had a support system in my entire life. We both come from military families, so I've never lived near a family member, including now where I have a child, right? And that community support is missing, I think, with a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. Definitely.
Even outside of the military.
Right. But I think that's why we've seen an insurgence of it. And to get even deeper with it, I truly believe that doulas exist at the capacity they do now because of the nuclear family lie that everyone bought into and suburbia.
We wouldn't be necessary if there were still those community structures that were set to actually support people and be an actual community. Because inside of your nuclear family, you can't. There's not enough. No. There's not enough. And there's not that wisdom and knowledge. And that's why I feel like doulas are so important. And I do see a path where we are so licensed and so regulated, and hospitals will only take you if you're licensed and things like that, that maybe your hands are tied. Maybe there are regulations. Maybe there are more rules. And I think that's where people's fear comes from, where it's very much like, are we going to be able to provide the support, right? Because the support is needed, right? And the support is already hard. It's hard to get people to know that they even need that support.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because there is such a communication of what a doula is.
Okay. So on the other side of it is, and maybe this is like just from seeing people do the people things. If you tell people to stay within bounds, they'll find a way to make a car into an air balloon and get over walls. Like, I never doubt that people will find a way around regulation and being told what to do. So I think that's also part of it, is like, I don't have fear over this because, like, literally I lived in places with true, like, scary amounts of regulation, and there's still people operating outside of it, and they're fine. Right? So...
But there's also places where people have to operate outside of that, and it's dangerous.
For sure, but, like,
you know,
what are we talking about
it's
then?
Activism, it's...
But at the same point, what are we talking about then? Because as a doula, I'm never doing anything dangerous if I'm staying within my scope.
Right. I meant dangerous for them, as if you are acting against the oppressors. It's not a safe thing for you to be the person speaking up. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
the person who is the activist, that things like that. If you know.
Okay. It's just that thing of, like, I think it's just like a place that is so 1984-ish, like, to take this idea, considering that there's so many things that are regulated, and yet we have no problems with it. And if anything, there's lots of things that should be regulated way more, because we're, like, one of the few countries that doesn't outlaw a ton of foods that no other country in the world does.
Literally.
And the fact that...
I am outraged by that, just so you know. I am very outraged by that.
Right. But, like, that's my point, is, like, there's certain things here where, like, maybe we should have just a little bit more regulation.
Yeah.
And if anything, I feel like this is, like, finally something a little bit bigger is seeing the work we do, and actually saw the impact of that work we do, and it's like, oh shit, they're, like, important. They're doing like big shit for our people.
Yeah.
Let's make sure more of our people do that. And that's what makes me excited over it.
Yeah.
Because again, the military, like, they have a lot of flaws, but they're going to make sure people survive because they need a lot of them.
Yeah.
And we're a way to make sure that they survive and they're able to do their jobs. Yeah. So I'm okay with being wrong. I'm okay with it.
I don't think anybody would say you're wrong. I think it's definitely a valid opinion, and I understand, like, completely where you're coming from. You know,
look, and I say this all from a privileged place, right? Because I have the ability to pay for the different licensing things. If I wanted to accept Tricare, I could. Yeah. I could pay out of pocket right now to go get certified by one of the 5 places to start to advertise that I'm a doula that you could use for Tricare reimbursement. Because again, I'm not a doula who accepts Tricare.
Yeah.
They're reimbursing people for doula services. And I think that, again, like, we need to slow down, because that's not what was said. What was said was reimbursement.
That you'll be reimbursed rather than covered by insurance.
Right.
And so I guess then a good question would be, like, what if doulas were covered by insurance? And would that change your mind about any of that?
No, not really, because, like, there's plenty of therapists who aren't covered by insurance, and people go see them, right?
Yeah. Or
dentists or OBGYNs, right? I know of so many people who pay out of pocket for birth centers, right?
Yeah.
I'm one of them. Because my insurance covered no home birth, no birth center, but they covered the hospital 100%. I paid out of pocket.
Yeah.
In this case, you're getting reimbursed for it. So again, like, you could find people who match your vibe better, and you just don't get the $690 back. And even then, that's assuming that someone wants to deal with the paperwork of fucking Tricare after having a baby to get reimbursed.
Yeah.
Right?
And the same thing with insurance and things like that. And dealing with all of that stuff.
Right. Because
sometimes it's easier to pay them than to deal with them.
Like, a story of my own, we were overseas visiting my parents, and my son ended up with a really nasty cold. We had, this is Germany, so, like, asterisk, much better healthcare.
Yeah.
But a house call at like 7 p.m. on Sunday from a doctor who came over to give him drugs and make sure he was good. That cost us out of pocket $125.
Yeah.
I could have taken that receipt and taken it to my insurance for them to reimburse me. I did not, because $125, and he came out and he did all this stuff for.
And here it would have cost you $10,000.
To get a house call never would have happened. For me to go down to, like, urgent care and hope that they wouldn't freak out that he was so young, and then be sent still to Phoenix Children's. Yeah. But
easily a high bill.
So I think that's that other part is, like, maybe no one will even, like, most people won't even do the extra work to do this. So I'm honestly more in the camp of, like, God, I hope people get it reimbursed. God, I hope that they show, like, that there's a want and a need for this. God, I hope that it doesn't just disappear because people are
enough talk about it, demand for it, people know
that 50 million doesn't get used.
We'll know that this is a thing, but people giving birth may not ever hear about it or know that it's a thing, which comes into a lot of things where there's lots of programs and lots of things that you need that exist, but most people have no idea and never go through the routes of finding. I definitely have like a very, hearing you talk about it, it makes me think about it, but I still have such an issue with licensing. I think just with the same way with what we've seen, where there's this big conversation about whether or not we should be certified and whether certified doulas should be needed. Like, and then all of a sudden, now only certified doulas can be in the hospital. I do think that there's a path where if there is a way to license doulas, that would be the only way you're allowed in hospitals, which then would make it necessary that you invest the money to go through DONA or ICEA or CAPA or whatever.
If you want to do hospital births.
Yeah. Which, again, is arguably where people need the most help.
Correct.
You know?
But and I think that's that part that, like, really bothers me about this argument. Yeah. If you want to do hospital births.
Yeah.
More than likely, though, if you have a problem with being licensed and certified, the person you're going to attract is going to have a problem with license and certification. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I just have the problem with license and certification because some of these big doula organizations
are lobbying. They're lobbying. There's a very clear reason why these 5 got chosen.
Yeah, and I have some issues with the things that they share, and some of the issues with the things of how they train their doulas, how they talk about doulas, like what they think the role of a doula is. I struggle with that because then if the only way to be in the hospital and to be with your clients and things like that is to jump through all these hoops, it seems like it would be tough.
So over on Twitch, Jesus, Twitch, over on Twitch, where we can actually respond to you guys a little bit easier because it's right in front of us. Relaxing Point, which, like, I'm just gonna plug her. She's fantastic. Massage isn't just straight. I came from a state without licensing to a state that does. Accountability is huge. We're held to a higher standard. Example, required continuing education. We are becoming more accepted by the medical world because it's licensure and insurance. Mm-hmm. Massage insurance reimbursement is ridiculous. But I think that's that other part that, like, people get scared about and that's where I end up in this, like, also fallacy of, like, what you're trying to hide. Why don't you want to get licensed? What you hide them, right? But there is something to be said if there was some sort of, like, licensing or certification. You're held to a standard. You're held to, like, you did this kind of stuff. So when I show up to be your client, I know you have a base level understanding.
Well, and see, that is, again, so where I struggle, because then who gets to set the standards? Like, who gets to say what is right? And again, that message, the same thing. Nurses are held to a different standard. They have to do stuff, say stuff based on these regulations, based on the culture of the hospital, things like that. And I think that one of the benefits of having a doula is someone who is outside of that, and someone who is able to come in and help a client think through things, not because of the liability, not because of the policy, but because what they want to do with their bodies, what they want to consent to, right? And if our hands are tied, if we get our licenses yanked because we spoke out against a doctor or, you know, things like that, like I feel like that is really the big fear that we're talking about.
But there's still to a point where people do carry liability insurance with them. Mm-hmm. So we're still under that fear.
Yeah.
Because if a baby dies or a person dies, which is a likelihood in birth, like it's rare, but it does happen, I still carry liability insurance with me. There's a situation recently where I had to bow out, essentially, because I was going to be put into a situation, if something went down, I'd be fucked.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's that other part of it that I don't understand, because we're still in situations where we could end up with liability and all of that, right? Like,
I'm not saying that we're not. I'm just saying that being outside of the system gives us a different perspective. For sure. It gives us a different.
We can stay in an advocate role.
Yeah. Which is where we there for our client, which is what our job is.
For sure.
You know, and not for the hospital.
And I think the really thing I want to preface is, like, the thing that makes me most nervous about this, because I've only said, like, the positive things, the things that makes me the most nervous about this is how quickly this could become privileged and white and, like, overwhelmingly controlled by individuals who will not honor where we come from and where this work comes from. And
that's part of my problem with those big top organizations.
Yeah, mine too. Which is why I'm not certified by any of them.
Yeah. Same.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, yeah. But, like, that's the issue I have. And, like, how do we combat that? Well, this is the first one to consider reimbursement for us. It means we make a stink about it. We let them know, like, hey, this was a good, like, shaky step forward. When we take the next one, though, let's make sure we make it stronger and it's our voices heard, not just the people in the room who were Dr. So-and-so or Senator so-and-so, that we're in the room. And I think that's that part that really requires the doula community to fucking step up and not just talk. Yeah. Because that's what I've seen a lot of, is a lot of people talking and no one's actually, like, reading the fucking stuff. They're just like, licensing, and or like, like, they said this fine. And like, slow.
And I've heard people talk about it prior to this, about licensing, about certification, about their qualms against certification, things like that. But I think that a lot of the people who are very pro licensing or even more regulation of doulas is very, like, they believe it will give you a better doula, or maybe someone who's not spreading misinformation, or anytime a doula does something wrong, they say, this is why we have to have licensing. This is why we have to have, right? And I see that that's a lot of people on that pro side are like, this is why. It will weed out those people, essentially. But what do you think about that?
Not willing to argue for the person for that. I can just tell you off of this experience. There was an organization here about getting doulas covered by the state insurance. Okay. When it came time for people to show up, they bailed. They were willing to be there for the arguing of this, and then when the bill actually had to be handed in, no one showed up.
Oh, okay.
When they had to sign their names, when they had to, like, actually do the work. Yeah. And that's that part where I'm not willing to argue with people on this. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to be, like, licensed and you don't want to be certified, rad, awesome. Then actually show up to those council meetings. Actually show up to the community work. Actually show up for the people that you're saying, like, like, they need unlicensed people, like the free birthers and this and that. Then show up for them and be the advocate. Because you can do it at the fucking birth, but you can't do it when your name's on it. Yeah. You can do it in the Facebook group, but you can't do it when you're actually, like, standing up and doing it. Right?
So what do you mean by I guess I'm confused. By, like, what are they not doing?
They're saying it in the boards and they're saying it in the Zoom meeting, but they're not actually going to, like, make sure they're signing or even protesting when that bill. The bill was from earlier this year. January is when it got sent over. Okay. And it was at the possibility that Access would cover doula care. Okay. And so they disappeared suddenly when the bill was getting handed in.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, and that's kind of my point, is, like, it was highly discussed in the, like, Arizona Doula Board of, like, hey, people show up, and they would be there, and then they slowly dropped away. Mm-hmm. So, like, I have little patience for it, because you're being asked to show up and, like, make sure it doesn't happen, but that bill still got handed in because bill didn't show up.
Yeah. Oh, so they were trying to keep a bill from going in.
Yeah.
Okay.
and they didn't show up to
stop it. Did it pass?
It's still being debated. It's going through the process because it takes a while for those bills to be thought through. That entire thing's being
figured out or whatever. All the politics stuff. Let's see. It says, I feel like there should be a governing body or some sort for doulas. Not sure if that means licensing or not, but it'd be nice to have a board or something to turn to for things.
Okay, but you're asking for licensing.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know how this works.
No, but that's what you're asking for. That's what a governing board does. That's what
I guess my thing is that governing boards don't prevent midwives who aren't good at their job or doctors who aren't good at their job, right? So I'm guessing, what are people looking for? What are they looking to prevent? Because I've even heard people say, look at this misinformation that a doula shared. This is why doulas should be licensed. First of all, doulas could be licensed and still share misinformation. Sure. There's plenty of people who are not even doulas who are sharing plenty of misinformation about birth. I see it all the time.
Yeah. Relaxing Point says it's a sense of security.
Yeah, they said, please be loud, elect your own board members. We are government run, and the governor picks the members, and I don't like this. Okay.
I think...
So, essentially, licensing would be good if doulas were at the hands of it, if they were in charge of it. Is that the thought of it? If doulas were the ones deciding what organizations, right, were followed, if doulas were the ones who were a part of the board or things like that, so that people who know what this job is are doing that. But then even that calls into question, what is a doula's job and what is the scope of it? And is that going to tell you different doulas do different stuff? And I'm not saying outside we're doing medical things or things like that, right?
But each person is a different person, so
yeah.
Cindy Lou versus Sandy will have different opinions, and they're both on the same governing board.
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand where you're going with this. I have not seen the call for I have seen a call for certifying doulas only when it comes to hospitals.
And we can't act like most births don't happen in hospitals.
Right.
So most doulas will have to work in hospitals.
Correct.
Even if you're working outside of hospitals in your client transfers, you will probably need to be in a hospital at some point.
Right. And of course, newer, right? So I'm quickly going to be at year 3. But the thing that I had read previously is, when I was researching to become a doula, is it's not necessary to get certified. And even the hospital students make it necessary. It's not necessary to do these other things. That's if you wanna, right? Yeah. And it's just to be able to, because certain people, and this is where I go back to, certain people are going to find that valuable.
Yeah.
And that's probably who you're going to attract, or those certain people who find that valuable. I wanted to work in hospitals, in particular with VBACs, so I knew the more education I had, the chiller that person would be, and that's who I was looking to attract. It wasn't until the pandemic, with all of this stuff going on of letting us in or not in,
which is right when I started, so I wasn't really there for that. That's right when I was being trained.
Yeah. So prior to that, it was not a thing.
Yeah.
It was nifty. Essentially, is where I would put it, and it was niftiest if you were a part of one of these 5 that got named, because they make it the hardest to get certified. And then under that, there was,
I don't know, mine was pretty hard, and it was not through those 5,
right? But they had the biggest name and the most hoops and all of this to jump through and yada yada. But I think it's more out of a place of, again, I think a lot of people during the pandemic had to actually figure out how to run their business when their main thing was squashed.
Yeah.
Right. And that's scary. That's really scary. But if you're in this for business, then you're in it for the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Right? If you're in this for advocacy, and the place that you need to go to advocate for is requiring a certification, just bite your tongue. Go get a fucking certification.
Well,
right?
and that is why I do understand the whole slippery slope argument. Is it went from certifications not being necessary to you have to have one if you're going to provide, support to people in hospitals, which is where most people give birth, right?
Right.
And now, like, people are even having a hard time getting certified in some places because they need to they're having a hard time getting into hospitals. And I could see the same thing happening with licensing, right? You can say, it's easy to say, like, oh, if you don't want to be licensed, don't get licensed. If you don't want to be covered by insurance, don't be covered by insurance, right? But then at some point it does become mandatory, or it becomes regulated even more, right? Similar things happen with midwives.
But at the same point, we've seen it with midwives, and we've seen it, I mean, even in the, like, best case scenarios, there needs to be some sort of, like, certification or licensing with midwives, because again, they're
medical providers,
right?
Yeah.
So, like, I don't think it's a fair comparison. I think the most fair.
I was talking about the initial.
Got it.
The initial licensing and regulation of midwives when it was almost eradicated as a profession, not necessarily in this moment.
I mean, to be fair though, I feel like that's comparing oranges and apples, and I'm, like, not trying to be pedantic with it, but, like, you're talking about something that happened 100 years ago, 150 years ago, and it was mostly around race and the politics of the time, and also, like, sexism and OBGYNs and surgeons and yada yada, right?
Are we free of race issues?
No, for sure not. For sure not. But my point being, like, what we're talking about here is not that. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about us being eradicated, or even us to be licensed so we're eradicated. We're talking about we're being licensed so that way we can bring more access. The opposite of what was going on with the midwives, because they were being forced to be licensed so that way
they could provide less support, and be available to less people.
Correct. And then they had to operate in the shadows, which a lot still do, right? But I don't think that's a fair comparison, because again, we're not medical. Yeah. And, like, if you want someone at your birth, for example, that is not licensed and does not want to do it, and your client wants you there and offers to pay for it, or, like, do the extra steps to make sure you're there, would you say yes or no? And I think that's another side of it that I would like to ask people. Mm-hmm. Your sister really wants you at her birth. Yeah. She only can birth at the hospital due to high-risk birthing reasons. Yeah. You're highly against being licensed or certified. Offers to pay for it, do you say yes or no?
If somebody offered to, like, paid for my licensing, of course I would say yes. Okay, it's my sister, so right? I think, but it's, again, like, it's just it's my thought is that not that at any point when I say I'm not going to be certified, I'm not going to be licensed. Right. At some point, I think it's going to become mandatory, right? At some point, I think it's going to be like, if you want to help people in hospitals, you will have to follow those things.
I think, though, at the very height of the pandemic, I mean, like, really bad numbers, they did that as a way to bring down the numbers of people inside of a room.
Yes, yeah.
So what's the quickest way to make sure that the person who's there to support is not going to get in our way? Yeah. They have to be certified. Yeah. They have to actually understand the protocols of what's going on in here, so you don't have your sister's cousin, friend, right, come in and support you at a birth, and they're like, I'm a doula. Yeah. When they watch some YouTube videos or whatever, through the eyes of, like, the medical system, or, like, someone who doesn't have that experience, or even someone who might actually be combative all the way through, like, they just did not have the time or the energy for it. Yeah. Do I agree with how that went down? No, but I understand the logic behind it, especially.
I understand the logic, but it did seem like a good way to, like.
No, it's Starbelly Sneeches.
Kick people out, right? Yeah.
It's Starbelly Sneeches. I did not agree with it, right? Yeah. Or do I, like, endorse it? But I understood
the logic behind it.
Yeah. Behind it. And even, like, to further this, now we are having those same hospitals not even check. Like, there's been a couple of them where I've walked up and been like, do you need to see my thing? And they're like, nah.
Yeah, because they're allowing to support people, or more than just the one person.
So, at the moment that they didn't need to restrict hard, they opened up completely. So I think that's the other reason I don't have fear over it.
Yeah.
Because it was like the necessary evil, and you can even see on the nurses' faces, they were like, oh, thank God someone else is here to like grab water and do hip squeeze. Like you could tell the nurses and even the medical, like I had plenty of doctors that were like,
I will say that I do feel like we do have a little bit of privilege just in my experience with a lot of the local hospitals around here, and that they are pretty welcoming of doulas, or at least not actively fighting against them, and I know that's not the case everywhere.
For sure. So and I think it only showed in the pandemic even more so of the type of people who were willing to change hospitals and providers and whatever to make sure that you could be by their side versus staying in the hospitals that were like, nope, we're not doing it at all, right? So I think if we trust the people, they're going to make sure that we're by their sides.
Yeah.
I think not only like educating the people who have Tricare who want to do the reimbursement, making sure that those people understand like this is what a doula does.
Yeah.
And they'll at least get the fucking pamphlet from Tricare now.
Yeah.
Just to wrap it back to the beginning, because people ultimately decided that they wanted us. And they wanted us so bad that a lot of other hospitals started to change their policies back to like, okay, you guys can have them.
I guess you can have them.
Right, exactly. All right. Like, sorry. Right. So, I don't know. Maybe, again, this goes back to my Hufflepuffiness. Maybe I just have too much trust in humanity. Maybe I think it's all going to be okay.
I trust humans. I don't necessarily trust the medical industrial complex. So that's where I'm coming from, and where I feel that there could be some big drawbacks, or there could be some furthering of that, right?
Right.
Because we don't have the ability, most doulas don't have the ability to operate outside of that system and operate outside of the hospital, especially for clients that they want to support, And so I really feel like you can't, it's going to be tougher to just go support home births, right? I don't want to just support home births, right? I want to support the people who need it. And it does scare me that there could be more and more regulations and more, right? A lot of these big organizations tell you not to advocate, right? They tell you that's not your job. When, in my opinion, that's our main job. The hip squeezes are great, and they're so helpful, and all of that stuff is great, but the advocacy and helping your client advocate for themselves and empowering them to do that is the biggest part. And I wouldn't want to see anything that would silence that or lessen our ability to speak up.
Right. And I understand that. And I'm by no means like coming from a naive place. Do I see?
You're just a Hufflepuff.
Right. Do I see where this could go wrong? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I see it yet unfolding that way? No, I just don't. Because we're not even to the point where they're requiring me to do anything.
Yeah. Because it could very easily be like what Relaxing Point said about the massage industry, where you're slowly starting to be more accepted by insurance and more accepted by, hospitals and things like that.
Right.
To where you're reimbursed for your services.
I don't think that's a bad comparison to us.
Yeah.
I really don't, because I remember 10 years ago bringing up to my parents that I wanted to be a massage therapist, and they were like, I never have a job.
Which is so funny, yeah.
Because my aunt did it like 20 years before me, and she like had a hard time with it because no one was doing it unless they could pay out of pocket for it. And I'm like, whoa, that sounds pretty fun.
Yeah.
But now we are seeing them inside of like true like physiotherapist offices and being covered by insurance and all of that.
And I will say that even to that point, there's a lot of things that I pay out of pocket for that are not covered by insurance and probably may not ever be covered by insurance, but I pay for them because I see them as valuable, and partially because they are outside of our current systems and things like that.
And like I said earlier, who knows, maybe this will even still be covered and someone will be like, yeah, I don't like the people on the list. Like, I'd rather pay the extra money for
let me pay for the product. And then I think that's the other thing is that then, and that's what the IBCLC who reached out to us was talking about, setting your prices. Like somebody else is kind of setting your prices. Somebody else is kind of, determining that stuff. And then we already have this issue where the doulas in your community are going to be part of what people think a doula costs and what they think what they value a doula as.
People are already way undercharged, in my opinion.
Yeah. So it's just, I feel like that would have to go into play as well,
Yeah. I guess there's that side of me in a case like, I'll put it this way. There's IBCLCs who exist inside the hospital, and during your stay, that's covered, right? Like, that's covered. For you to get extra care beyond that, you may or may not be able to go outside of the hospital once you go home and be like, need more help, right? And you still could probably find some that are in network and some that you have to pay out of pocket for. I just believe that's kind of how we're going to go with doulas. Like, I think it's going to be way more middle of the road than the doom and gloom of it.
I think I'm good at doom and gloom.
Yeah, for sure. And it makes it a more interesting, like, I understand what's happening. Like, it's a much more interesting, like, talking point if we're, like, polar opposites. But I think, honestly, we're going to end up where there might be a doula on the floor if you didn't come in with one who just, like, does the shift.
Well, and again, why not just have an extra nurse? You know what I'm saying at that point? Like, it does seem odd to have someone that you've never met before. It does seem have someone odd to, like, you know what I'm saying? To be your, quote, advocate. Because part of it is, like, the relationship that you build prior,
But there's, at the other side, like, there's family advocates at the children's hospital that get paid by the hospital. Yeah. And they're there to be combative. Like, to be advocates for those families who have dying children, to be like, this is things that you can ask for, like, push for it. So I think it is possible to, like, exist. Will they be the best at the job? Maybe not. Yeah. Maybe someone else, like, if you were to hire outside, but I honestly think the solution to all of this,
universal healthcare. Sorry, never mind. Continue.
No, I mean that would be great. My honest opinion is that we worry less about who gets doula access and we worry more about who gets childbirth education. That's what I think the solution to this is. If Tricare had come out and said, we are covering childbirth education and only educators that are through 5 different places, would we have heard the outcry in the same way? Probably not. But that's really what we all need to be pushing.
To be honest, I'd probably go get certified.
Right. But, like, that's what we should be pushing, because that's what educates someone in the room or even outside of it of, like, I need a doula, I need this, I need that, and I need to make sure I have a better provider now.
And it's also your ability to reach more people than you would have ever been able to realize. Someone says about the hospital doulas, you may not have had a relationship with the midwife or the delivering doctor, and I think having that choice is amazing. And I agree with that, but I think that is one of the benefits of having a doula that you know beforehand, is that you may not know anybody else in the room. You're not going to know the nurses. Maybe you don't know the delivering provider. Right. Like, having one person that's there that knows you, knows what you like, knows what you're asking for, knows what your birth plan is, yada yada, right? Yeah. And that's why I do think that having a doula where they either have a partner that you get to meet, or they have a backup that you get to meet, so that you're not coming in with someone who knows nothing about you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But your childbirth education point is a great point. That is what we really need, because I think the big problem of people not understanding what a doula is, or that they need it, is that people don't understand that there's a problem. Like, they don't understand that there's a problem with how we birth in America. And our maternal mortality rates rising, even though every other countries are going down. And, I don't think people know those problems. Yes. And I think that is the big barrier to that. And things like childbirth education could really help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with you. And I think that's the solution to this. If you're mad about this, be really shouting out your childbirth education people.
Shout out. I have a childbirth education
Alex
class.
has one, and it's coming up.
And it's really great.
It
and
is.
I'm very proud of it. And it's all about, like, all the choices you get to make. And not, like, here's one way to birth, right? The childbirth education class I took was very much like, here's how you have an unmedicated birth, right? When it came time to not be medicated, I was not prepared.
Right.
I will tell you that. So a lot of it comes from that.
Right.
And Emmy has VBAC classes.
I have VBAC and general cesarean classes because, look,
nobody has
no one has a general cesarean class. No one. And no one's talking about that it's actually uncomfortable to get a cesarean. No one talks about it.
Yeah.
Or that you feel tugging and pulling, or that you smell things, or you could still freak out, right? No one's talking about it, so these poor birthers go in and they're like, I'm not going to feel anything. I have a friend across the street who's like, I thought I felt my cesarean because I started to feel tugging and pulling, and she had to be put under.
Oh, no.
Because it was freaking her out so bad.
Yeah.
Because no one prepared. Anyway, I won't even get down that road. But this is what we should be pushing. If you're upset that licensing is coming, start teaching people why that's scary.
Yeah.
Like, that's how we solve this.
Start teaching people that they need advocates. Teach them how to be their own advocates. Teach their partners and their family members why it's important. Because that's the thing is I think that's the big gap.
Yeah.
Learning that made me say, I have to do this job. Yeah. I have to do this work, right? And I think that people don't hear it, right? And people don't understand it, and they don't see the full scope of it, of why, like, it's not like, oh, haha, a doula is great if you want to have an unmedicated home birth. I hear that all the time. Oh, I would love a doula if I had a home birth. And I'm like, I support people in all places, right? That happened to me at the coffee shop the other day. They were like, I would love a doula. I wanted to have a home birth, blah, blah, tells me the whole story. And because I'm wearing a doula shirt, and you know how I hate when people talk to me in public. But, but I was like, oh, yeah, I support people, at hospitals and everywhere and stuff like that. And she was like, yeah, I know. But I know that people with home births have doulas.
Right.
And I think that's funny because I meet a lot of people who have home births who say, I don't need a doula.
Right.
I have a midwife. I have my husband or my partner or whatever.
Right. Grandma's coming.
Yeah.
Right. Because this is where we go back to the original thing of, like, communities. Home birth exists in a community-based. Hospital birth does not.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it makes sense. I think for everyone to know, we're going to be okay. We're not like disappearing until January because of this conversation.
This is it. Emmy wanted us to disagree on something. We finally did. I'm out. I'm never coming back.
But, like, I think you and I, look, I think if anything with this episode, it's shown that why we cannot monolith this community, and we're 2 certified doulas. Yeah. So I can't even imagine.
I went through the process of certification. I paid the money. I put the effort.
I have multiple certifications.
Yeah.
I have multiple certifications. So I think to, like, put an asterisk on this, we do not speak for the uncertified community or individuals who are really on that side of, I will never license. Like, I can't even argue for them because I don't know that path or that life or, like, why. Yeah. And it could vary from everything from cost and privilege to the other side of, like, fuck the man and, like, you can't even find my house on Google, right? Like, could be anywhere in between those. So I just think, to preface, if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I learned everything. You did not. You did not learn a goddamn thing here. Go research further. Go, like, understand these different organizations and maybe why they were picked. Talk to multiple doulas and their opinions on this, and, like, formulate your own. But I guess I'm just gonna leave it off with, don't be scared. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be
the Hufflepuff says it'll be okay.
It's gonna be okay, guys. I promise. It's gonna be all right. Besides, it will be after my generation if it gets fucked up.
We'll leave it to our children
right,
to do it. They'll handle it. Like the baby boomers did to us. Right. It's going great. It's awesome
I was
right now.
Raised by baby boomers, so
I wasn't either.
Anyway,
it's fun to blame them for their problems because they started a lot of them.
Right. Well, guys, I appreciate you guys showing up in the way you did.
Yes. Yes.
in like our Instagram, and like we've gotten comments from you and all of that. We're not disappearing. We're still going to be on our Instagram account. You'll see us next week with a bonus episode on YouTube. Like I said, go back and rewatch those old episodes. There's some really good ones in there.
And we've gone a whole season.
I cannot believe
12 episodes. Yes, 12 episodes. Because I'll post the next one. And I still have yet to receive an email. So somebody needs to watch these
fucking
episodes and send me an email so that I can read it and respond to it. But I can't complain because we have gotten lots of great like social media messages, like all that stuff. I love you.
We love you too. Also,
I hate everything, but I love you all.
Also, maybe the email is that you guys want to come on and be a guest.
Yes, we will be looking for guests for season 2.
But thank you guys so much. This has been a blast, and I still can't believe we did this.
Yeah.
We like did a whole season.
I'm so proud of us.
I know, for like 12 whole weeks.
Yes. Yeah.
We went through our first trimester together.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
All right, man.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Love you.